The Sales Proformance Show, your source of inspiration in the world of sales and business development. Here we blend cutting-edge sales strategies with personal development, helping you achieve not just professional success, but also personal fulfillment. You'll hear from the experts to help unlock your true potential. And now here's your host, David Sliman.
Welcome to the Sales Proformance Podcast Show, everybody. I'm your host, Dave Sliman. We're here to deep dive into the minds of exceptional leaders who redefine success and inspire others to elevate their game. And I am so pumped about our guest today. I've known him now 12 years. 12 years. I was going back and looking at this and thinking about it. And he's a true visionary leader, not only personally, but professionally behind his company. He touches the lives of people all throughout the country and around the world. And he embodies the essence of leadership. Every time we get together, I get pumped up. I leave the conversation pumped. And when I come to Phoenix, I really try to get together with him. And he just demonstrates remarkable prowess in not only building successful companies and businesses, but also in personal growth. So get ready for an insightful journey. We're going to delve into his strategies around growth, again, professionally and personally. He's written a book called Hiring on Purpose. We're going to touch on that as well. And I just love the way this guy is wired and his mindset, and I love talking to him every time. So Max Hansen, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for the incredible intro. Hopefully I can step into those big shoes you've created. So I'll do my best. But one thing I would say is, for the listeners out there, I'd almost say everything you described, kind of described about me describes you as well. I think you bring incredible energy. And I think, there may be some people that think it's woo-woo out there, but, for the people that really understand how to build companies and how to drive companies and how to be successful, I think the energy people bring to conversations and just the energy they bring day in and day out is like one of the top things that they have as a leader and as a person. And you've got that energy. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh man, it's great. It's true. Every time we talk, I get pumped. I'm sure we're going to get some of that stuff today. So thank you for the compliment as well. All right, let's dive into it. Let's give our listeners a little bit of a history lesson. I know you're heavily in the recruiting business and you've in all that good stuff. And so talk to me about your start and give everybody a perspective of how you've gotten to where you are today. And we're going to dig into that.
Yeah. I'll try to be somewhat brief, but cover a lot of ground. So I started in the recruiting business in 1998. So that makes me feel old when I say that. I started at Aerotech, which Aerotech is a Fortune 50 company, very well run. It was started by Stephen Bouchatti, who now owns the Baltimore Ravens. He still owns part of Allegius Group that owns Aerotech. So I feel like I got a really good start in a big company that really trained people well. And I really appreciated that because I think that is really kind of set me on the course that I began on. And so that's how I started. I left there to go take a job for a little bit more money and was only there for a couple of years. And then I started to, I went through a part of my life at that time where I knew I could do better, but I knew I didn't know a lot. And so through this, it was right after 9/11, and the company I was working for after Aerotech, they had promoted me because I kept telling them like, hey, put me in, coach. I think I can help drive this business. They put me in and 9/11 happened, and business was tough going for those that remember 9/11. And then they kind of just, kind of were like, all right, where's the results? And I was kind of dealing with 9/11. So long story so much short, without throwing people under the bus, it wasn't a culture for me. And so the thought process was, I knew I didn't know a lot, but I wanted to go start my own company. And that's what I did. I went and found a partner in crime. So I found a guy that I competed with, local in the area in Tempe, Arizona. And we ended up incorporating our first company, which was called Job Brokers, in January of 2002. So that was the start. And the one thing I would say about Job Brokers is after all this time, and we'll get kind of further in, where I'm at today and what we do today called Y Scouts. But Job Brokers was interesting because the name in itself is something that I've learned over time that most people aren't looking for. If you really ask somebody like, hey, are you looking for a job? I mean, a job's almost like a 4-letter word. Nobody's just looking for a job. People want more than that. And then nobody really wants a broker involved in deals. No knock, I do sales. I appreciate brokers. But when you think about it, a job broker, it worked back then, but it didn't. It doesn't really flow that well now. But that company was very successful. We that was in January of 2002. We grew to about 50 million in less than 10 years, and it was an incredible ride. And then over some trials and tribulations, I started to want to do more for reasons we can get into if you want. Sure. But it's been an incredible journey.
That's great, man. That's great. And so now, then after, so you built that company, and then you were acquired at that point too, right? Or you had sold the company, I think, at a certain point.
Well, what happened, it was me and one other guy. And what I started to realize at job brokers, we did a lot of contract to hire and direct placement, and then some retained work. And what I started to get really passionate about was at scale, we came in and helped companies basically hire basically everybody in their company. In some cases, we'd start with a company that were doing like 1 million in revenue and took them to doing 80 million. And we hired about 1,000 people for like one company. Wow. There's lots of them like that. But what I learned in the process was like, I loved helping hire other leaders because I could have such a bigger impact by helping people at the leadership level, and the positive like cascade that happens when you get high enough up into a organization and you're able to find the right leader at that level, the impact is a lot greater. So I got kind of addicted to that. And then at the same time, I would say, and this is no knock on contract to hire recruiters and direct placement recruiters that work at the lower levels, but there were 3 things that I started to get really disenchanted with. At the beginning of my career, I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. We did that in the first 2 or 3 years. We were, billing millions. We went from first year we're doing about $1 million, second year 5 million, third year about 7 million, fourth year about 15 million, and then it just kept going up till we're doing 50 million. And what I started to deal with, we dealt with a lot of receivables issues. So like this is going to age me a little bit, but always was chasing money. Like these big companies would owe us a ton of money because we did a lot of hiring for them. And a lot of times I'd have to drive down to their, if it was in Phoenix, drive to their headquarters, and they'd have to write me a big check to give to my bank. So I didn't like that piece. And then there was the thought of the contract to hire where we weren't necessarily fixing the problem that these companies were having. And in some cases, I felt like once I was smart enough to know, we were almost perpetuating the problem by hiring so many people into something that had issues probably further upstream that needed to be addressed. And so as I got older and more mature, I just didn't feel right and ethical making tons of money off replacing these seats. So that was another one. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was we did a lot of utility scale solar. And so we were in a lot of manufacturing, and we started to have a lot of injuries with all the growth. And that was just a tough thing to deal with. So it was those 3 things that I decided to move on, and I sold those companies to my business partner. But before I did, so I sold them officially in August of 2015. In 2012, we officially incorporated Y Scouts, and Y Scouts was like the R&D of what we were doing and what we could do better. And that was all retained executive search. And then in the transaction, when I sold those companies to my business partner, I kept Y Scouts and have been basically growing Y Scouts ever since. So that's kind of the backstory.
That's great. And I want to touch on that company, Y Scouts. And why Y Scouts? I mean, you're in the space, and I know you work with a ton of executive leaders in the placement space. And you've given a little bit of color of why you've shifted into that. But really now, what's your focus with that company and the development of that?
Yeah, so the focus honestly hasn't changed that much at all. In fact, the process is the same. It's just that we're able to automate and do things a little bit faster just with technology, as you can imagine. Yeah. But I think, the thought was like when I was in that place where I was making a ton of money and not very happy because I couldn't figure out what it was. And I think it took me a while. I got lost and figured out that, and this may be pretty cliche because people use purpose in a lot of ways, but Y Scouts was the first ever purpose-based leadership search firm ever created. And it was created in a way that all of the hiring we did, tens of thousands, we saw like stuff that didn't work anymore because of technology and just stuff that was getting outdated in the hiring process, which we can get into. And so the other thing was I personally lost my purpose. And so it was this like losing myself, making tons of money and still being lost in, and then, kind of finding myself and finding this new challenge of like, okay, let's go figure out how to go help companies understand what their purpose and values and their, kind of cultural aspects are, in addition to the professional competencies and leadership skills. But let's go figure out how to help them identify what those are. And then let's go find leaders and take them through a process to also identify and align them in a way that's different and better. And so I kind of did that with myself and, kind of coming up with help of other people, but coming up with that process of helping me rediscover my purpose through starting a purpose-based leadership search firm. And then now, that's kind of what we get to do with all the companies we work for.
Yeah. And in your book, you say hiring on purpose. It talks about the idea that the ideal candidate that looks good on paper might not be the right one for your business, right? And how do you unpack that? Because as you know, everybody puts their best foot forward in their resume and all that good stuff. And you're right. And when you're at a higher level too, that's got to be harder to sift through and hard to identify just because of the experiences and the background they have. So how do you dig through that?
Yeah, I won't get too far into the minutiae because I think people might not want to hear the detail. If they do, they can reach out. But the way to think about it and the way we started attacking this problem at the very beginning, when you start testing this, when I was at Job Brokers, like looking at the challenges, is we believe at the most critical level, which is, manager and senior level roles, that you got to get it right. And, I think most people, the way they think about hiring is how many more places can I blast this job description out and how many more people can I get to, to see this? And we don't take that approach at all. And I don't recommend that. I recommend, we only reach out to targeted people that, we don't know if they're gainfully employed or not. Typically they are, like 90-something% are. Not to say that there's bad people that are unemployed. It's just for these critical roles, we're targeting people, not with job postings, that we reach out to them and let them know that we're retaining exclusive by a company that cares so much about the complete alignment around purpose, values, and culture, that we want to take them through a discovery process to learn more about them before we get into the details of the role to save them time. And I know that's kind of a mouthful, but anybody can do this. And the way they can do it is, we do it because we're representing a company and we don't have to disclose who that company is till we've taken a person through a purpose and values discovery process. But people can do this. If you own a company and you have a talent acquisition, or maybe you're a solo entrepreneur, just use a Gmail address that's not associated with your company and let them know that you work for a specific company, but you'd like to get to know who they are before you disclose the details, because you're most interested in who they really are as a person and what they most believe in and what they really want. And when you do that, I think and I know we do it all the time, but it separates you, and it separates you from the clutter of all these job descriptions getting thrown at people. So it's just really an authentic way to understand who somebody really is before you pollute their brain with all the stuff that you want to hear from them.
Yeah, and I want to back up on that, because whether you're a sales professional, you own a company, you're running a company, the one thing you do here and what you're saying is you got to be different. You're actually working the process backwards, right? Versus the traditional way. And that's one of the things that, we've talked about, is just the idea. We'll talk about AI maybe in a little bit here and how I loved your quote that we had when we discussed this last time, but don't be ordinary. Look at it from different perspectives and try to look at it from different angles and different and listen, sometimes things aren't going to work out, but other times you're going to be innovative and trailblazing on different ideas. And that's one of the things that I know that you focus on, is always looking at things from a different angle, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people we've worked with, we do kind of testimonial videos, and they'll be like, hey, like you guys look at it like you turned it on its head. And I think an easier way to think about it, just, so we don't get lost in the details of the exact process. But what you can, take from this is, at scale, we've proven out that when you get in a conversation with somebody that you don't know, and even if you do know them, focusing on the right things first is going to change what you learn about them. And what I mean by that, and this is easier to picture, is everybody goes into a conversation, especially an interview, with a mask on. And the only way to get that mask off is to take your mask off first and to be human and ask about personal stuff and ask about like stuff that isn't like what they can do for you in your business right away. It's more of like, what do you most care about? Like, what do you like outside of the office? What do you like to do? And really get real and then share some of the stuff you like to do. And in my opinion, this might be a simplified, very simplified version. But if you can do that in hiring, and you'll get a lot further, and you'll uncover a lot, more important things to find out if there's true alignment, especially at the leadership level, than you would if you post jobs and you reach out to people like, hey, I've got a COO role open. Can you do this? I mean, it's like you've already started at a point where like, what can you do for me? And it's transactional versus like, who are you? Is this worth even spending time? Can I leverage your time by understanding who you are first before we get into the details of like what you can do for me and I can do for you?
Yeah. And I think it goes across all medians. If you just take that approach, everyone wants to jump into, what's the pay? What's the, all that good stuff. But, I think going into that approach is so key in so many levels. All right, let's talk about leadership. You work with a ton of leaders. You're a leader yourself. We've led the charge, and, we've helped people who are in charge and all that good stuff. What are two of the most common traits or most important traits that you feel for someone who is aspiring to be a stronger leader or who is in leadership right now, that you feel is kind of the keys? Like, you got to have these couple things.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer this in a way that's a little bit different, just because it's what's on my mind right now. But we've got a structured leadership model that we can talk a little bit about. But I think the first thing to really understand, and I've been listening a lot on this, is like, if somebody really wants to be an entrepreneur versus an intrapreneur, I think that they need to know that like entrepreneurship is so glorified in social media, and it's fucking hard. Like, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, but I think most people don't know that. And they see, these people taking, pictures on jets and all these things, but they don't know that person, if they're truly, they've made themselves, and they're, kind of self-made. Well, you kind of use that term loosely, but they have so much, they've been through so many struggles, and they continue to push on so hard. And most entrepreneurs that I know, and I'm sure you know, and including yourself, is like I'd hate to say it, but it doesn't necessarily get easier. You just, you just get more passionate about it. You find different ways to deal with it, to do it, to, sharpen your saw. So that's one thing. And then there's entrepreneurs. And I think understanding the difference between the two is very important, because in an entrepreneur, you're always going to need entrepreneurs that can come in and help you scale, what you've created and the vision that you have. Yes. Now, in all that, I would specifically talk about, 3 what we call elevated behaviors that we like to see in leaders. Okay. But I think that first one's important, because I've been thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know, you talk to leaders all the time, and if they're true entrepreneurs, it doesn't necessarily get easier when companies get bigger and more complicated. In fact, I would argue in some cases, most entrepreneurs would say it gets more difficult because they keep raising the bar on themselves. So that's one thing. But the 3 things that I think and we think at our business that makes the best leaders is somebody that's a relentless learner, somebody that just they can always figure it out, which I think is super important in this day and age with all the technology out there, because you've got to learn how to leverage technology better than ever now, because it's so powerful that if you don't, and this, I think we'll get into it's not that AI is going to take your job, but the one person that knows how to use AI is going to take 5 people's jobs, and that person needs to be you and the people that work for you. But the second thing I'd say is what is the track record of a person's ability to develop other people? And then the third one's kind of obvious. So you get those 2 right. And then the third one is just almost like a checkpoint. How do they drive results? What happened when they started with a company, and what happens when they either leave or, end or move on, or what's that look like? And so, really looking at those proof points of starting with the results is super important.
Those are great points. And play that one back. Okay, everybody, I always say that. And there's always a moment in these podcasts where most of the time where I catch something and I'm like, you know what? Play that one back on the leadership, go through those three and really try to build a foundation. And I agree with that 100%. You touched on something with the AI, right? And listen, the world is always going to evolve. The world is always going to change. It's a matter if you want to just sit back and watch it or if you want to get involved in it. And I love what you just said about the AI side of things. Either you're going to have to figure out how to use it or you're going to get passed by, I guess, in some instances, right? You'll still have a lot of opportunities, but talk to me about how you've leveraged AI in your experience in business, because it's here. It's not going anywhere. It's actually only going to get stronger. But I agree with you. You've got to learn how to leverage it. And I'm still learning myself. I mean, I will tell you that first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what I've started to pick up on is, first of all, depending on how big your team is, you got to get individuals within the team, and depending on the function that they fulfill, you got to get them to start testing it and using it and start figuring it out for themselves. Yeah. Because what I don't think works that well, and I think it will maybe down the road, but is to say, okay, here's this AI tool, use it for these reasons. I think what you got to give it to different people on your team and say, hey, use these and see which one works best. And you got to get them bought into it, in my opinion. And then once you do that, there are some things you can stitch together. We're working on some pretty cool stuff that is helping us, basically do what we do more efficiently. And I think that the other thing, and this is just me, I'm not a tech expert by any means, but I think what people are mixing up a little bit is AI, and they're like combining like all machine learning and all that as AI. And I think like they're different. We've had these tools for many years. It's just like AI is helping kind of stitch some things together, and then obviously giving it some they call it inference.
Yeah.
So it can infer based on like the things you're giving it, but it all you got to give it enough information and then let it infer if that's something you can do. But it's super cool. I think you gotta test it. You gotta start, seeing how it works. It can do amazing stuff.
It really can.
You just gotta test it. And there's so many different pieces out there to test.
Yeah. I think, we touched on this in one of our conversations, and it was like, okay, we'll use a simple example. Show me give me a description on how to make a pizza, right? But if you're descripting and said, hey, I'm running this restaurant and I want a pepperoni, mushroom, and sausage. I mean, it's more than this. I'm just being simple about it. But you got to just be more detailed in the way that you want things when it comes to the descriptions. And that's one thing that I'm learning through it, is sometimes it doesn't spit out the answer I want, or I get what I want. But when the more descriptive I am, the better it becomes for me as a tool to use. And I agree with you. In the ever-changing world, you've got to get people comfortable with the idea of just playing around with it, test it out, who have not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like some of the main, and this is like just very basic stuff, but some of the cool stuff that you'll see is that if you tell it your role and you describe who you are, and then you could even like take a writing sample of yours and say, describe what this type of writing sample is. So then it'll give you a description of your writing sample. So then anything you do, you can say, put it in this writing sample, and It's exactly your writing sample. And then if you want to say context, you can tell it who you are, and then you tell it context of like maybe a problem you're solving, or here's the context, here's the transcript from, this is, I'm just making this up, but if you gave me the transcript from this podcast, I could tell it my role, your role as a podcast host, and mine as the guest, and I could say, hey, and I'm hopefully this comes off humbly, but I could say, create, the high points of the podcast, and like where it actually it tells you like where different points are. You could create like an educational piece, like create a workshop out of the podcast, and it will create that stuff. But you just got to give it context, and you can give it full transcripts. You can do all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's pretty incredible, like what you can do, but you just need to guide it. Yeah,
I agree with you. It's great. All right, so let's talk some personal development. Back in the day, man. And I remember you and I in that gym, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd see you in there grinding it out. You and I just focused on that and doing it. We recently talked about that idea, and I am adapting to it. But what do you do as far as from a personal side? Physically, mentally, you and I both believe mind, body, and spirit, having that thing aligned up to be the best that we can be, not only from a professional standpoint, but also personally in our families and our lives. But talk to us, because I know you do great. You put some good work into this, but how you develop yourself personally.
Yeah, I mean, I am a person that is probably a little bit over the top, but it's it's something that I have a lot of interest in doing. I think physically, I was an athlete when I was younger. Played college baseball for a year, and then didn't really work out for a little while, and then I just kind of started getting back into it and started to realize like I really want to be the person that I feel like I should be, and that person is somebody that is pretty buttoned down and has a regimented workout. When I feel like I'm physically fit, obviously I'm mentally fit. I think everybody agrees that you can't take care of other people unless you take care of yourself. And I believe the first way you take care of yourself is to be physically fit. And I just turned 49 years old, and so there's a lot. I mean, obviously I lift heavy probably 3 or 4 times a week. And then now I believe that you got to do, at least a couple hours of zone 4 or 5 cardio to kind of keep yourself and your cardiovascular system in the right shape. But, I've gone as far as I went and got stem cells a couple times this year down in Cancun. So umbilical cord stem cells, which really helped me a lot. So it's a passion. It's something that I don't feel complete unless I get a week's worth of workouts in, which my week's worth of workouts are pretty intense. I think the one thing that's new to me, relatively new over the last 6 months, is I did this thing when it's called epigenetics, where they take your measurements from your body, believe it or not, and they can tell you your body type, and they can tell you what really works best for your body. And I'm a diplomat in the epigenetics kind of categories.
Yeah.
And the diplomats, they don't it's not good for their bodies to work out in the morning. And so I took so much pride. I made a piece of content on this not too long ago, and there was a pretty good engagement. But I feel like the world is at this place, again, it's social media and glorifying stuff. Not everybody's body, and I just found out mine over the last 6 months isn't this, but not everybody's body is meant to wake up early in the morning and work out. So I had to stop doing that. But I will admit it was very hard to stop doing that, because I had this identity, I'm this masculine person that gets up and just crushes the workout first thing in the morning. Well, as soon as I stopped doing that, I was I wasn't as tired. I had my time with my family, with my daughter, and I do bath time. That's my thing with my daughter. And I just, all of a sudden, I wasn't tired at night anymore. And so it kind of changed me. And again, it took me, 20 something years to figure that out. But I just kind of laugh, because you got Mark Wahlberg, and I see
4 a.m.
other people that are, the 4 a.m. club. I mean, that okay, if that's for you, then that's for you. But I found out it's not for me. And that was one of the big takeaways.
Yeah. And I saw the post and I loved it, and we talked about it, but I love you. Just because you don't work out at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning doesn't mean that you're not going to attack the day, or you can't move your workouts later. And it was funny. I was working with a team last week, and we talked about the idea of we did professional goals, and then we talked about the idea of some personal goals as well. And the gentleman said, "Hey, I want to get in shape, and I'm going to start going to the gym 3 times a week." And the first thing I said to him is, I said, "Well, have you kind of map that out, when you're going to go and your times?" And he's like, "Well, I tried getting up at 5 a.m. and I couldn't do that." And I said, "Hey," you rung in my head. I said, "You don't have to work out at 5 a.m. You can make it later in the afternoon. You can make it later in the morning." But I have to admit, I'm on the same page with you. I'm waking up a little bit later, but I feel better after my workouts. I was waking up at 5 o'clock to do my workouts. And you're right. There were days where I was just dragging, and I'd fall asleep at 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I'm like, what is going on? And I've made this little shift to just start waking up at 6:30. And it's changed things for me a little bit as well. And I think that's one of the points that you've made here. It's just little adjustments sometimes. And it was so hard for me to make that adjustment. And I'm still struggling with it. I told you that last time. I'm still struggling with it just because I did an hour later. I mean, it's crazy. But no, I agree with you. Being physically fit is part of it. And being able to move through that will help you carry yourself through times that are tough, and working through challenges. One of the things that the balance we talked about, right? I heard this, I don't know, it's probably, I don't know who said it, but it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. Anybody who's a high performer is going to be out of balance at some point, right? It's just natural. So how do you balance yourself between, because I know you got a family, I have a family, when you're out of balance or you feel out of balance, how do you bring yourself back in, and how do you try to maintain that balance for yourself physically, professionally, family, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first one to admit, my brain is always working. This morning I didn't get up, but my brain woke up at 4:30, and I was thinking about stuff, and I was fine that I just laid there for about another hour before I got up. So I struggle with this a lot, but the workouts for me, that's why I kind of prefer them midday, is because it's a break for me. I mean, that's where I can be thinking about stuff, but be moving. And for me, that it helps me. The other thing that helped me a lot, and this was actually from my epigenetics, it said the environment's important for me. So when I get outdoors, so if I go on if I'm thinking about something, my best thoughts, and I'm sure this is for a lot of people, come when I'm out in nature. I'll go hike Camelback because I'm right here. So that's good. I think the other thing that's important is if you have a spouse or the people around you, if they're accepting of the fact that you are, your mind's always going to be working, and, just they can gently remind you hey, snap back into it. So you got to have people around you that are supportive of, what it is that you're trying to do. I think, I've got a 5-year-old, and so I think spending time with her is good. Putting my phone down. I think I struggle with that too. Getting it away from me and, focusing on that. There's other things that I'm still working on too, is my 5-year-old, I might've shared this with you, but I put my phone away one time when I was eating with her, and she laughed at me, and she's like, "Why do you eat so fast?" And I'm like, I was laughing. I mean, I would have never noticed that. But I always focus on, slowing down, exercise helps me, managing my schedule pretty tightly, and, kind of protecting my time, saying no. It's hard for me to say no. I'm a yes person. You probably are that way too. You're like, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. But you got to know, everything you say yes to, you got to balance it out with knowing that, you're probably gonna have to say no to something else at this point in your life, because you have a full life. And I think the other thing that on the personal side is, any of my friends, and I wouldn't say this if you were like this, you're definitely not like this. Any one of my friends that make me feel guilty, if I see somebody, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. When I see you, if they give me a hard time about me not reaching out sooner, or make me feel guilty about not, spending more time, I just slowly cut them out of my life, because I don't need that. I've got 5 kids. I've got, a business that I'm, and others that I'm involved with. But so that's just one thing. I know it's a very stupid one, but I had to start getting good. I've actually been through a coach kind of therapist, and he was like, dude, you need to cut people out of your life. And so, that's
serving you, right? That's serving you. Exactly. And that's the key is, I think that's such a good point on the personal level, because especially, we always want to take this meeting or take that meeting. And this is something I'm really on the level with you on this. The older that I get, okay, because I'm 49 too, we're the same age, the more I'm trying to be selfish with my time. Do I really need to be on that meeting? Or does this meeting need to be an hour? Can we really get it into a half hour? And then the priorities, again, I have a 12-year-old as well. And I make it a priority to get him to school and just sit in the car with him. And sometimes he wants to listen to his headphones and not listen to me. And I touch him and I'm like, hey, dude, what's going on with this? And he's like, okay, but it's just those moments that you've got to prioritize and make sure that you kind of put those rocks in each week, that's what I call them, as the rocks, working out, the family, and then and once you have those rocks kind of in a jar, then all the dirt goes in around it. And those are the secondary things. And that's how I try to go into it. Now, it doesn't always work that way. We know you get out of balance sometimes, but from a philosophical standpoint, that's really how I try to bury it or put it together as well. So it's important. All right, listen, man, great stuff here. I want to talk about one more thing because I know you do this, and this is for people out there who are moving into something new, maybe not in their comfort zone. Talk to me about your experience and some of your knowledge and ideas behind pushing past your comfort zone. How important is that for you? And what would you, give some advice to somebody who's maybe a little bit uncertain about moving into a new venture, maybe starting a business, maybe moving into a new job, moving up levels? I mean, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, I won't be too cliche-ish. I think everybody knows that, outside your comfort zone is where you grow and you develop. I mean, that's 100% true. Yeah. But I think when it comes to business or even personal stuff, I think that the thought of testing stuff. So, and the fear of being wrong, you got to get rid of that. The quicker you can get wrong, the quicker you can get right. And so, you got to kind of force yourself. And I think I think this was to give credit to, I think I saw an Alex Hormozy video and he was talking about this, and I 100% agree. Yeah. He was talking about there's a statement that I saw somebody where they talk about, be, do, have. And, I think the way he I don't remember his exact words, but I agree with it. And what he was saying, what I agree with is you just got to do. If you're trying to find the exact be in the environment, it comes down to making commitments and keeping them to yourself, working out, making, a walk, sticking to stuff. And that helps you make quicker decisions and start doing stuff. And the quicker you can do and test and, fail, the quicker you can succeed. I know it's cliche-ish, but so many people think about doing stuff for so long, and you just have to start doing it and just go. That's how I would that's in a short version, it's a little simplified, but that serves me well. And I have to remind myself of doing that all the time. It's let's do it. Let's go. Let's not think about it. Let's not think about it. Let's be about it.
Just do it. Yep. That's great, man. It's funny. There was years ago, Art Williams, he, I think it was probably about 15 years ago, I got turned on to this speech on YouTube. And he did it in 1984, which was crazy. Okay. And Art Williams was a big motivational, he built insurance companies and into extreme heights. But his speech was coined, just do it. And he talks about that, people who come to him and say, hey, Art, I'm really going to do a great job this year. And he's like, great, just do it then. And, I'm really going to get my wings this year. I'm going to get going. Great. Well, just do it then. And that was the premise of his speech. So for all you listeners out there, if you get a minute, go to YouTube, check out Art Williams. It's a funny speech too, because he's an old football coach and it really made an impression on me 15, 20 years ago when I saw this. And I think you hit it on the head, man. That's why we're so aligned. You can't overthink things. And sometimes you just got to do it and know that the mistakes that you make, you show me any leader and I'll show you people who have made mistakes, learned from them, and turn those into positives. And I think that's one of the more important things is you are going to have bumps in the road. You're just going to have to be able to accept that, but learn from those mistakes. It's only a mistake if you don't learn from them.
100%. Yeah, I can't agree with you more.
Yeah, man. Great. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up. I can't believe it's been almost 40 minutes now. It's great hanging with you, man. I really appreciate you being on the show. I think you've again touched people who are listening to this that are going to take a number of things that you've said today and apply it not only professionally, but personally. And the next time I'm in Phoenix, that's the one thing, I think back about this just a little bit. when we were in Phoenix living together, because I lived there for 25 years with you and known you for 12 years. I wish we would have spent more time together, but we were doing our thing, we were doing our thing, growing our businesses. And when I do get with you, I really enjoy the time. I really enjoy spending time with you and talking with you about business. And I appreciate all that stuff, all that guidance and all those conversations and future ones as well.
Amazing. Yeah. We were coaching our kids, 5-year-old football, 6-year-old football teams when we met. And my son, our kids are at college now, to give you any idea. So it's been a little while, but man, it's been awesome to know you. I look forward to keeping in touch with you. Thanks for the time today. This was awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually, Michael, he just got his contract in the SEAL. Wow. So he's going to be moving into SEAL. So we're excited about that. But thanks again. I really appreciate it. And where can people find you, Max? Where can they check you out?
Yscouts.com. It's yscouts.com. And then I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I try to put some content out every week. And it's just Max Hansen. You can find me, Max Hansen, Yscouts, on LinkedIn. Yeah,
he puts great stuff out on LinkedIn. I like about it, it's to the point, you get to it, it's great posts. Everybody can learn from that kind of stuff. And again, just appreciate stuff that you're doing right now. So, all right, everybody, check us out on salesproformance.com. Like this, subscribe to it, share it. We appreciate your support in the program, and we will see you next time.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.